everybody. This is Lori, and I am the founder and CEO of Inclusivity, and we are devoted to kindness and justice and sustainable fashion. And this is our podcast, Inclusivi-TALKS. And today we are fortunate to have one of the artists who is creating a panel for us for our auction that's coming up, Artists Who Share. And this is Barb Rocas. Was that right?
Yeah, Barbara Rocas.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So, Barbara, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
It's a real pleasure.
Definitely a pleasure to be here and be able to talk about this with you.
So I always like to start when I'm speaking with the artist, just asking about how you got to art. So what was sort of your path? When was the first time you knew, I'm kind of an artist here?
All right. So growing up, I was pretty fortunate that one of my older siblings, a brother of mine, was heavily into art. He was definitely older than me at the time, so he would draw, paint. He actually ended up doing tattooing later in his life, but watching him create as a young child was very inspiring. So that's part of it. And another part of it is that my mom was a children's librarian, so she would always have picture books around, and I was obviously obsessed with picture books because of that. Every day I would read one, at least one, if not more. And I was just surrounded with artwork, I suppose, growing up. So it was always something that I was very interested in. So I've been doing it probably my whole life. I was always really into doing hands-on stuff. And I guess just naturally, it's something I've always done. So it's something I've done my whole life. I guess I've always done different mediums, but I've always was into experimenting with seeing what I can do with each one. And I definitely remember as a kid always wanting to have a little bit of time before going to school to quickly work on something or paint or something. So I feel like that's just, it's always been a part of my life.
So what were the mediums as a child? What were the things that you were most drawn to? And then how did that change over time?
So originally I was obviously into the things most kids are into. So crayons was a big deal, markers, the typical craft type things.
Yep.
And then eventually, as I was going through school, I remember in, I think, high school, I went to a technical high school, and I had to apply it again and everything, but we were learning a lot about graphic design. So I started getting more into that area, which was really nice. So I had a chance to do both fine art and graphic design. So it was pretty cool, growing up and seeing it being applied in different ways, and seeing that, working on stuff with crayons and markers could apply to real life stuff. So I think that was my trajectory, art material wise.
So it sounds like for you, the graphic design just sort of gave you another avenue to do the work that you really loved.
Yeah.
Do that.
Definitely.
And is that what you do mostly now?
Yes. So I do freelance graphic design, but my real job is I'm actually a teacher. I just moved and was fortunate enough before the corona hit to get a new job in this new state as a preschool teacher and an art teacher, which is very nice. So, but when I'm not there, which is now, I'm mostly doing freelance work for people that, like musicians I work a lot with, just people that commission gifts and portraits and that types of things. So I do a little bit of both, but I do graphic design. Yeah.
So when you work for musicians, what kind of work are you doing? What kinds of things are you creating?
So recently I've done t-shirt designs, I've done an album artwork, I've done other merchandise, so like stickers, just posters. Usually I do a lot of posters, which are really fun to do. But I think it's really fun because that's the stuff that the fans get as well. So you're creating, it's pretty much branding for the person. So it's really fun.
And have you had a favorite project, like something that you just think, boy, that was really awesome?
So a friend that I made over this last year is a indie musician from Philadelphia, and her name is Alyssa Joseph, and she just released her first album, so she was just starting on creating her branding image, and she liked my artwork, and I was able to work with her through that whole year of just creating all of her stuff. And I think as a collection, it really does capture her sound. And I was pretty proud of that because before that I was just doing little things here and there, but that was one of my bigger little collections I've done. So that was
So you
fun.
kind of helped create her
Mhm.
persona, her look.
Yeah, at least for the
That's
time
very
being, because it's changing, but I do think it was cool to work with that. Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
So when you were younger, when you were a child, what else were you interested in?
So I was really into like video gaming,
Mhm.
cartoons. I thought that was what I was going to do in the future. Is I was gonna like work on like a TV show and be the person who like draws the animations and stuff like that. And I was really big on reading. As I said, my mom was a children's librarian, so I really liked writing as well. So I think I always kind of wanted to go in some sort of avenue in my life of creating something as like a career. I always felt like I had a big imagination. I love to play outside a lot and invent things. So I was that kid making, tree forts and whatnot and pretending to be things. So I think that imaginative part of my life still is around today.
Yeah.
But yeah.
One of the things I've really noticed talking to the artists is that most artists have lots of creative themes going around their life, and whether it's, including writing or music or sort of everything. And I feel like for a lot of artists, it's the sense that they want to be creating all the time, but there's just a passion for that creative spirit.
Definitely. I definitely feel that way.
Now, do you write things do you write poetry? Do you write prose? What kinds of things do you write?
So growing up, I wrote a lot of fiction. I liked to invent stories. I was really into, kind of like horror fantasy stuff. So I would make haunted house stories and cheesy kid stories.
Yeah.
But as I was getting older, I feel like I was more interested in actually transforming. I know I'm hitting all the different things, but I started getting into wanting to make short films. So my stories would turn more visual, and I would get my friends together and we'd shoot little videos in like my friend's backyard. We'd set it up, and I don't know. I was always just trying to bring my ideas to life and see what would happen with them. And I know my friends probably think I'm crazy, but
that's okay.
Yeah.
Most artists tell me they feel like they're a little crazy sometimes. So I think that's normal.
Nice. Cool.
So do you write now?
Currently, I suppose not, but I think that I've turned my writing into my art in the past few years.
Right.
I feel like lately my art's become more symbolic and have deeper connections to the things I think about and the books I've been reading. I've been doing more reading than writing lately. So I think that's how it's moved into my life. But
well, that's interesting. So you went to high school and graduated. You said you were at a tech school, and then did you go to college, or what was next?
So right out of high school, I actually spent 1 year at School of Visual Arts in New York City.
Wow.
And I had this vision in my head. I was going to hopefully go through the graphic design major and become some graphic designer in New York, typical Mad Men fairy dream. But I really didn't like it, surprisingly. It wasn't what I imagined in my head. I was commuting at the time because I'm originally from North Jersey. And I would commute every day to the city with all my art supplies, and it was fun, but I just feel like the atmosphere wasn't really working with me as an artist. So I left after that first year, and I took a gap year trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And I worked a couple full-time jobs, and I was very tired. I was trying to save money to go back to school. And I ended up after that year going to Montclair State University. And that's where I stayed. And I ended up changing my major actually from graphic design to art education because I wanted something that meant more to me in that sense. I think my philosophy of art changed, so that fit it more precisely. And I ended up going through that whole process. And they actually have a teaching program there that's an extra 2 years. So I did that. And I graduated in 2018, and that's where I am now. So I have a fine art degree with a teaching degree together, rather than just a graphic design degree. So that's the route I took.
And did you say you're teaching preschool?
Right now I'm teaching preschool, but I've taught K through 8, and I've subbed for a while, so I've had experience with all age groups. But I've always had jobs working and teaching either kids or working with, the community. I worked in libraries all my life, go figure.
I was going to say, how strange.
Yeah, it's just something I love so much, and I really like being able to work in my community and with the people around me, and especially like getting to know people around me is very important.
Well, and you
So,
said you haven't lived where you're living now very long. Is that right?
yeah, I think I just moved here a little over a month ago, and it's sad.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I just moved down here right before the coronavirus hit. So my partner and I, as soon as we got here, everything was closed. So we can't even really, I don't even know really what's around me. It's very little. I'm excited for it to hopefully open one day. So I can't.
And it will.
I'm not rushing it.
It will open one day. Yes.
But I mean, yeah, so I'm in this new place. Haven't seen anything. Excited to check it out. But
So do you have a favorite age to teach? Because I just feel like art is so, well, it's fantastic at every age, but it's so different.
It is. Definitely. Actually, during my student teaching, the program I was in required us to do, if you were in the arts or music or something, to do half with primary school, and then you have to do half with high schoolers to be able to get a feel for what you like. And I personally like them all, but I do specifically like high school a little bit more, only because the students are old enough to conceptualize, and it's not teaching the basics, which are fun, but I like to work with my students, and I feel like teaching is also a learning experience. So it's pretty fun for me to bounce ideas off of these students and see the types of styles and creators they're becoming. But the kids are really cute though when they're learning the basics too.
They're adorable when they're young.
Yeah, exactly. And they're very imaginative. It's funny how both groups are almost opposite of each other. Older kids are kind of wanting to make what looks good based on maybe what they think people think looks good. And then the little kids just want to experiment. They're making a mess. So it's very interesting.
Yeah. It's probably good to do some of each.
Exactly.
Now, did you move for your partner's work, for your work, or just because you both wanted to move?
A little bit of everything. The biggest reason was that my partner does have family here. He hasn't seen in like a decade. And things in our lives at the time were just kind of leading up to this for both of us in a way, both in our living situation and work situations. So that's how we ended up here, and it was kind of very fast, but I don't know, I'm kind of a believer that you kind of just go with the flow at certain times in your life and it'll take you somewhere, and I definitely feel that way. Yeah. So, yeah.
It's one of the other things I'm enjoying so much about interviewing artists. So we now have 36 artists.
Cool.
For artists who share, plus artists from Colombia, the Netherlands, Argentina, and Africa.
Nice.
And but what I'm enjoying is that I'm doing podcasts with most of the artists, and I hear exactly what you just said, that sometimes I just want to go with the flow, or I believe in taking leaps. I believe in taking a chance that feels like the right thing. And I sort of love that spirit of exploration. And I think it's what makes art so fascinating and interesting, is that you're willing to do that.
Yeah, definitely.
So what's next for you? If you had to sort of look at, particularly with art, with other things too, like what's your future like? What are you hoping? Where do you see yourself?
So right now, I mean, I'm very excited to get back into teaching. Back when I was in Jersey, I was doing private lessons, and that was the first time I really started private lessons. Besides doing the jobs I was telling you about, I also had a sort of side job doing paint and sip events that I started on my own. And
doing what?
Paint and sip.
Oh yeah.
Events.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. I spent 3 years working at one, and then they closed, and I was really passionate about teaching, and that kind of style to me seemed very accessible. So I do have a business called Bab's Paints, Barbara Babs. And that's something I'm hoping to do here as well. It's really fun for me to be able to bring that to people in all sorts of areas and different learning style, like skill levels. And So that's something I want to hope to do. And I also really want to focus on building a bigger body of art. I know some people that know some people. I know that sounds a little sketchy, but
Totally understand.
in the city over here that are part of the arts situation. And I would love to put on some shows. So a big thing that my partner and I, he does music back in New Jersey, that we love to do is we put on events and shows and be part of local art shows and just bring that community together. So that's something I hope I can do here as well. I'm very excited about that. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds very exciting.
Yeah.
So I would love to, a few more things I want to talk about. I would love to see the piece that you're creating for artists who share. I'd love to have you explain that to us and talk with us about it. And then I want to ask a little bit about if you had advice to give younger artists, what you might say. I'd also like to know sort of your life philosophy. And then I'm going to ask you to tell us a story. So I'm just kind of setting you up for the rest of the interview. So the first thing I'd love to do, if you're willing, is to show us the panel you've been creating for the event and talk with us a little bit.
All right, so I'm not sure if this is mirrored or not, but I'll have to read it if not. So this is my panel. Again, I'm not sure if the border needs to be completed, but I can.
I would say complete it. The panels go on a soft bag, and so sometimes the frame buckles out a little, so it just looks better if it's completed.
Gotcha. Yeah, so again, I saw some of the examples on the website included quotes, and to me, when you're creating something that's to be presented on clothing or a bag, you obviously want something eye-catching, something that at a quick glance it sticks with you. And that to me is, when I saw your company and what you do, that to me is what we're trying to do, is trying to spread a message as well as share some artwork. So I picked a quote that really means something to me. Mindset is everything. I'm a firm believer that the brain is a very powerful thing, and that just, the will to do something can get you there if you truly have a passion for something. So always reminding yourself that, no matter what situation you're going through, that you can get to where you want to be if you do focus on what you are thinking about and putting forth into the world, and the things you're doing right now, are they what you want to do? So always remind yourself about what is your mindset in the moment. So this is acrylic. This is canvas, so I figured acrylic might be the best thing.
Beautiful.
Thank you. I also really like to use gouache that I think is similar to acrylic paint, but I didn't have any on me. So I really also like to incorporate nature into a lot of my artwork, as well as this panel. To me, nature is a really big inspiration in my life, because I also believe we are all connected in that nature. We are nature, essentially. So when I see images of, any sort of nature, whether it's flowers or even just the sky, they remind me of the bigger picture. So I always like to incorporate those elements. So these are lilies I decided to paint on here.
It's really beautiful.
Thank you so much. So my process when going through this is I usually look through fonts and figure out which one is the most eye-catching with my idea. So I know this one might be a little hard to see on the camera since it's white, but I figured...
How did you put the words on there?
So I love typography, and I've practiced a lot of lettering in my life. These lowercase serif fonts to me are easy to draw. So I do open up an alphabet of the font, and I do my best to just draw out the font, honestly.
Wow.
Thank you. A lot of fonts are difficult to do, but these there are specific ones I do like to use in my pieces that I practice that are easier for me.
And do you, Barbara, do you sketch what you're going to do before you do it, or do you usually just paint?
So I have changed my process the last few years. I used to think a lot too hard about what I wanted to do, and it would prevent me from ever coming to what I wanted to make. It would really hinder me. So I decided to work in each separate element and
Okay.
kind of imagine what I want as I go along. So I started with the quote first because I know I wanted this quote. And then I try to visualize what to me would I kind of almost go in a meditative state sometimes when I do art, because I need to really think about how it feels to me, what I want to convey. So I start thinking of different symbols and I write them down, and I start looking at pictures and I try and feel that connection. And then I just found these lilies that I really liked. It was a bouquet of lilies, a picture I saw, and each individual lilies to me, I wanted to draw out around this. So the next part was doing the flowers, and then the last part was obviously figuring out the colors, which also worked in that way. I started with pinks, and then I was like, well, what color, comes next? So it was each separate element kind of just came along.
I love that.
One
It's
at a
really
time.
beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We're excited. So if you were looking back, or not looking back, but if you were talking to artists who were coming up, not that you're that old, but you've had quite a bit of experience now. So if you were talking to artists who were coming up, what would you say? What pieces of advice would you offer?
I think a really big thing for me especially is find some sort of way, whether it's on the computer. I like to do it hands-on using, scrap stuff, but always be out for things that catch your eye. So make an inspiration space, not necessarily a board, it could be anything. But always keep ideas, because one day, you could always look back on it. I have lots of notebooks and filled with ideas, and it's always good even when I'm stuck on a piece and I'm like, what element would look good here? I can flip back and see, oh, that's a great idea, and just see if it fits. But having a collection of things to draw from is really helpful.
So Barbara, what kinds of things? Because I know that writers sometimes will say to me, I just have a notebook of sentences. Like I'll think of a sentence and I'll think, oh my gosh, I have to put that in a book sometime, and I don't know what book and I don't know when, but I'm just going to keep this running list. Is it those kinds of things? Is it actual images? What are you?
So I think it would be different for everyone, I guess, but for me specifically, I'm definitely a visual person. I love textures and I love color combinations. I'm always out to see like what colors look good together. So I'm that person who, when I'm driving with my partner or outside, I'm like, wait, I have to take a picture. And he's like, of what? And I'm like, of that building with that sign. I have to take one. So I have a lot of pictures on a folder of my phone of just random things, and every now and then I put them on my computer so I can actually see what colors make them up, or just as a texture, sometimes like a fence or the way the trees are would make a great background. If I cropped it in, that would make a great texture. So I'm a picture taker. I know my boyfriend's a list maker. He makes lists, but I used to also have I know I don't use it anymore, it's pretty old, but Tumblr back when I was in like high school. That's great for images. I know now people do Pinterest, but even just like anything that you're like, wow, I would never thought of that, you can always make a little folder or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for you, it's very visual things that help. It sounds like with the color.
Yeah.
In particular.
Okay. Definitely.
So what would you say, Barbara, is your life philosophy? And I always like to think of this as the thing that is most important to you. Like, what is at your core? And then how does that influence how you live and the decisions you make?
So that is also something that I think has obviously changed throughout my life. But recently, I think I've been inspired, and I have this ongoing mantra, I guess, of fail faster. It sounds bad, but it's something that has definitely helped me. Usually I get caught up in ideas, and I'm very passionate about my art, and I have I really want to help people. That's just my, I know a lot of people say that, but that is one of my biggest things I would like to accomplish in my lifetime, is to hopefully help people in some way. And a lot of times I think I get caught up because, again, I can be a perfectionist sometimes, and when things don't turn out my way, I start getting anxiety and frustrated, and it makes me stop. And I feel like a way to get past that is just to fail faster and start on to the next thing. Just don't let something stop you. Just let that be, great. One less thing I have to worry about. Time to move on to the next thing, because I'm going to get somewhere somehow.
Yeah.
But stopping and never picking up my art ever again and completely hating on myself and just sucking in all that negativity, it's not going to help me. So that's been really something that's helped me a lot, is to just,
a little bit more about that, because I love that term. I don't know if I've told you, Barbara, but I'm also a psychologist.
Cool.
And so I'm a geriatric psychologist, actually, in addition to owning the business. And I love that term, fail faster. And I just like to understand it a little bit better.
So again, I feel like when you hear someone say it can come off as negative, because it does have that failure sound to it. And sometimes when I tell people that, they kind of laugh and they're like, yeah, because I think in their head, they're like, I'm never going to fail ever. But that's another thing we have to accept is, where I always feel like I want every experience to be a learning experience, because when I was younger, I suffered with a lot of anxiety, and I feel like a lot of things prevented me from even imagining what I wanted to do next because of all the negativity. And I just think that again, that's why having a place to collect inspiration is important, because that can always help to be that little boost that you need. But not to be afraid. That's another thing. It's like facing your fears. So face the failure and use it as a learning tool. Really look at it and pick it apart and see what maybe you've done and why it failed. And that's the next step, and then move with that to the next thing. So that's a little bit, I think, how I feel about that. Yeah.
So it sounds, Barbara, that it's not giving up. You're not talking about just give up. Every time something gets hard, give up. You're talking about more introspectively looking at it and saying, okay, this didn't work. So rather than continuing to beat my head against the wall, I'm going to say, okay, this didn't work. Why didn't it work? And what can I do to take the next step? Is that kind of accurate?
Yeah, I feel, if you keep noticing all the bad things and this didn't work because A, B, C, D, and E, then it's time to start thinking about, when you can feel that you're listing all those things, it's definitely time to start picking yourself up from that. That's like my little warning of, okay, Barbara, you have to move on. That's the fail faster part. Just get it over, rip the Band-Aid off. Time to move on. But it's hard. That was like a really big thing for me to deal with. And it took me a long time to like accept that. A lot of unfinished projects. So yeah.
So besides art and writing and creating, what else are your passions? What else do you care a lot about?
I'm also really into music. I've always been into music. Music's a really big part of my life. I think it's that place of communication that everyone can kind of come to at times. And I feel like I love combining that with my art. So back to like putting on those events, it would be a really big deal to have the visual artists come together, the musicians come together. We'd have the film people come and have stuff behind the musicians, and it would be this whole experience. And I'm really passionate about, I guess communication in that sense. I used to have a little discussion group I used to run on Facebook Live. I'd stream it, called the Omniologists, where I'd have a couple people with me and we'd have a list of different philosophical ideas or just questions about what was going on in the world at the time. And we just sit and talk it through for like 2 straight hours. And so I've always been really passionate about trying to learn more, because I feel nowadays everyone's on their phone. I know it sounds like a cliche thing, but having real life experiences, and having people together is really cool. And then I'm also really, really, really passionate about the outdoors and hiking and being connected again to nature. So whenever I can get out there, I try to get out there. I really have, I don't know, I just feel like my place of peace is when I'm outdoors. And so that's something I care a lot about. Definitely.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
You sound like an incredibly well-rounded person with lots of passions.
Oh, thank you.
I think that's terrific.
Thank you.
So the last thing I usually ask people, well, actually, I wanted to ask something else first. So what's sort of your heritage? I'm just curious what your what your background is.
So my mom is Italian. She is second, third generation. So she's American, Jersey, born and raised. And my dad's from the Philippines.
Oh.
So it's pretty cool having the two different sides of my family. The mixed culture, sometimes the food's great. Karaoke parties, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Italian and Filipino food. I bet any
Yep.
family gathering is delicious.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how'd your mom and dad meet?
So they were both working at, I think, a nursing home at some point. So that's the type of people they are. They're very giving and caring. So I think it's a silly story, but yeah, they met helping the elderly at a nursing home. My dad, I think, was working his way to become a nurse at the time, but that's how they met. And I don't know, I think it's like a cute little story, you know, two people that care so much about others and
And find each other. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a great transition actually into the last thing I want to ask you about, which is I always ask people to tell me a story from their life. And I like to preface it by saying it does not have to be the story. It doesn't have to have a big moral lesson. You don't need to teach us anything, although you can. But it can just be a story that when you sort of look back at your life, it feels like it's yours. And it feels like it's something that, again, for whatever reason, is just a story that's yours.
So I was thinking about it, and I do think that there is this kind of memory or experience I had that really kind of inspired me to want to go into teaching and be a teacher. And it's funny because it happened back in high school. And as I said, I went to school for graphic design after that. So it was one of those things that kind of stuck with me and reminded me of what I really cared about. So in high school, we had not only the graphic design arts, but we also had just a fine arts teacher as well. And I remember senior year, you could take the fine arts as an elective. Obviously, I wanted to take it, so I took it. But other students from other majors could also take it since it was an elective. And I remember there was this guy who took it, and he was from the automotive major, did not like art. I think he was put in there because for some reason.
You had to take something.
One of those students that I can see now in students that I taught before that hated art, didn't want to do the projects. They were like, I can't do this, and throw the pencil, you know, that type of thing. So it's funny. So in a way, I feel bad. I do think the kids kind of made a little bit of fun of him for not wanting to do art. And the rest of us are artists. But yeah, so one time I remember the teacher just covering the basics had to teach the lesson on using the grid method. So like enlarging and, you know, a basic drawing technique. And it was funny because he was having issues with it. And I watched the teacher work with him one-on-one. And over the course of the project, you know, he would get more and more focused. He would stop, you know, lashing out. I didn't want to be creepy and like just watch what he was doing, but I was observing what was happening. And I do remember at the end of the project, it turned out absolutely beautiful. And you could just see the transformation in him as a person. He was so confident about the piece. And I gotta admit, I mean, I was like proud of him. I was his classmate, but I was like, I am so proud of you right now. And the coolest thing is that all these years later, I think we're just Facebook acquaintances. He's on my Facebook friends. But every now and then he will post a piece of art that he's done. And I know that he doesn't work in the arts. He just does it for fun. So to see someone like a decade or more later still do it because it makes them feel good, it made me feel like I want to do that for students. I want to inspire that kid who doesn't think he can be creative to be creative. And that's always stuck with me. Her name is Miss Pavese, so I thank her for inspiring me and her teaching methods. But yeah, so that's always stuck with me. And that goes with the fail faster thing too. So kind of somehow, yeah, it was pretty cool.
Well, I want to thank you actually for being that teacher, because teachers like that made huge differences in my children's lives. And I can pinpoint teachers for both my children who were just the pivotal, listened and got them and paid attention. And I think that students benefit from that so much. So thank you, because
thank you.
Matters a lot. So anything else you want to tell us about? Oh, actually, I do have one more thing I want to ask. If you have any other art that's sort of around you that you can show us? We would love to see some more pieces.
Sure. Okay, I got something on the wall.
Okay.
Whoop. Not gonna work that. All right. So this is a piece, hopefully the glare isn't too bad, that I've done maybe last year.
Oh my God, really cool.
Thanks. I was really into astrology and spirituality. Yeah. So this is my zodiac. So I'm an Aries. So again, I firmly believe in manifestation. And I felt by spending some time and really creating this, and again, working from each element and thinking about what my process is, I feel like it helped me during that time. So this was last year. But yeah, I think just creating it was a meditative experience.
It's beautiful.
Thanks. It's one of my favorites. I actually use this image on my business card.
Okay.
Yeah. I feel like it represents me.
Thank you.
I think I have something else, but you know what? Hold on one second. I do have something else. All right. In terms of a different medium,
yep.
I've also really been interested in bookbinding.
Okay.
A few years ago, I took a printmaking class, and our professor taught us how to make hand-bound sketchbooks for the class. And loving books, obviously, I was like, this is awesome. I never have to buy a sketchbook ever again. I can make them myself. So I started making some sketchbooks. Let's see. But these are all just like hand-painted, hand-bound sketchbooks that I've made.
Beautiful.
Thank you. I just use canvas on the outside, so I paint them. Yep. And then the inside is just drawing paper that I've bound in the middle. And the fun thing about these is that there's actually 96 pages in here, like front and back, but it's so tiny, and I can just put it in my bag. And the cool thing is these are really nice sized pages for like putting like taping or gluing or just like that inspiration place again. So I do sell these, but
I was just going to ask you if you did. Yeah.
Yeah, I do sell them. This one's kind of fun because it opens up to the full butterfly. But yeah, I'm always inspiring people, you know, fill your own sketchbook and, you know, make it yours, make it something like your space to put your ideas in, and to have the confidence to do that. Sometimes making your own sketchbook helps because it's your own. But yeah, that's something else I've been working on too. So
that's very cool. So how long does it take to actually do it, to make a sketchbook? Not counting the decorating the cover.
So making the physical thing takes a few days, only because you do have to press it and make sure that all the things are sealed. Otherwise it'll fall apart. But it doesn't really take too long. Again, the more I do my process, I feel like I streamline it a bit and know what my process is. And that's another part of the way I make art as well, as I kind of focus until I know how to make it 100%.
And then you go on and learn something new.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, Barbara, what a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here. I can't wait to see your art in the auction. The auction's at the end of June, so it's just an exciting thing to look forward to.
I'm excited too.
And again, thank you for telling us a bit of your story, because I think we all want to know. We want to know what the artists are up to and what they're doing.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
So this has been Inclusivi-TALKS, and this is Lori and Barbara. Thanks. See you next time.